We will now have plenty of time for discussions, and I think we have a lot to debate and to discuss, but I would like to start by pointing out that the group here has also produced some handouts that we have been asked not to photocopy, because the culture of the academia is to keep it lean paper-wise, and so they are available on the digital platform. And now for starters, for the discussion, I would ask you to put questions regarding the presentation. As you know, as you recognized, some people are not present that spoke in the presentation, so don't ask them. But if you have questions to the presentations, please speak up now.
Interesting is they were talking about intergenerational getting together and helping each other, and in the discussion something came up which looked like intercultural help because of the names of the people they were helping. They were younger, but they also had names that were not your case. It was not exactly a German name, it was a different name, and I think that's an important factor that should be also looked at in a country, not just intergenerational, but also intercultural, which was the case in your case. Just a comment.
Well, thanks a lot for that comment. I would actually like to put that question or that comment a little bit in the background. I would like to come back to it, because I think there is also some explosive device implemented there. Because what I was asking myself during the presentation, and it struck myself that there is something about a culture, but the question there remains then, what actually do the elderly have to provide if we are in a technology-driven and a society that becomes ever more differentiated, and the elderly come from a more homogeneous society, at least in most European countries. So there, the question for me is basically then, is it again the youth that can provide, or is it really the elderly? And I would just have you think a little bit about this, and I would like to go back to that. What can the older generation really provide to the younger generation? This also goes back to things that Professor Höpflinger spoke about this morning, and he actually acknowledged that there is not that much of research or provision or say programs or etc. in that direction yet, and still we had a I'd say a very strong voice in that presentation that was pointing out how the potential there, and also the desirability of this mode more enhanced. And I would like to go back to that question, but I still would like to have some more questions regarding the presentation.
I was quite impressed by the last statement you showed concerning that you are not in fact very much desiring to consider what will be the condition of your retirement, because it's not a question which is actual to you at the moment, that you are more concerned with the situation of the other generation, the one of your parents. And my question in this respect is, how do you feel about the discussions which are going on in different countries, not only in this country, about the sensitivity of this generation, the other generation, the one of your parents, of extending the retirement from 65 to 67 or to 69 or whatever it is? You now, as a young generation, how do you feel about these discussions?
Anyone volunteering to answer that question?
Well, at first maybe state that we haven't even entered really, or at least not all of us, the labor market. So, and that was basically what the last statement said. Isn't it a bit early for us to think about this topic? Because that's a very abstract point of view on a timeline. Of course, we have to work longer, so we have to work from not only until 65, but then from 65 to 70, or even longer, we don't know yet. But what should we, in general, think about that? Okay, we have to work hard, work long, but won't that maybe even change until then? We don't know about maybe medical changes until then, and maybe it's going to be up to 95.
I did not express myself correctly, probably, because it's not your situation now, it's a situation of your parents. So you spoke many times about solidarity.
Yeah.
And do you think that the upper generation is in fact acting correctly in terms of solidarity when there is so tremendous discussion about extending for 2 years the level of or the stage of retirement? I would, if I would be in your generation, I would feel it's really unfair of the upper generation to have all this discussion if it can help you but that's why I wanted to hear what you think.
Fedra.
I'm Greek and I would like to answer to the question because my parents have already extended their retirement age to 67, and we have many times talked about that, and they're really disappointed about that, and I feel it. But as I see of the demographic changes, and I see that we have to adapt our European system to those changes, I think there are no many other solutions. So I have accepted personally that I will work as long as possible because of my own future generation, of my own offsprings. So I think that this answers kind of your questions.
I'd also like to give some feedback from the Swedish colleagues. I remember that they had fights with their parents about that question. The Swedish students were all economists, and so they had the hard data, and they confronted their parents, and there was really a divide. I remember that very much. They had a strong disagreement. And I will collect now some questions before we answer them.
Thanks, Ernst Hafen, ETH Zurich. Great presentations. I was particularly attracted by the generation contract. And the generation contract, as it has been in the past, is of course largely within the family. So you know your parents, you know your grandparents. They used to live with you, now they don't. And now often you don't have that much contact anymore. But if you think about what you said about Rock Your Life, where you're going to extend the generation contracts to people that are not your family, but are people that may actually be much more valuable for you in this particular stage of your life, from an intercultural exchange, from a professional exchange, etc. The question is, does the Rock Your Life platform, is that a social network where you get randomly assigned a partner, someone to tutor, or is this somehow already tailored to what you can give or what someone needs? And something like that as a social networking could of course be a very potent tool to sort of improve that, even across generations much further up, to sort of, talk to people who are, whether they're angel investors in one case or whether they have great tutors in mathematics on the other, they're already retired. So does this platform implement already these sort of matching algorithms?
Susanna, can you answer the technical part of this question very quickly?
Okay, it is an organization built by students, and they go to a school, present their concept, ask the students, are you willing to participate in this project? And then they can sign in there, just a list. Then they go to the uni, present their projects, ask the students, would you like to participate in a project? And then they bring students of the university and students of the school together in a matching, and then they start working together.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on, just collect Gerd Volkers.
Gerd Volkers, Kollegium Helveticum. I like your presentation very much, thank you. I'm a little bit critical about this Japanese model of the teacher and the scholar, because I ask myself who gets the favor? It's the elderly person or it's the younger person? If you can use or you can misuse this system to have a very traditional education. The whole thing is not unknown in Europe as well, in the tutor system, in the Anglo-Saxon world, or even if you go to science, in the teacher-student relationship or the professor-PhD student or doctorate-student relationship. But we know that this is very often very problematic, and I do not want to give a long comment, just a short anecdote. You all know this saying, we were able to do that in science because we were standing on the shoulders of giants. This has been inversed by some of these guys that have invented Google. They said, unfortunately, giants stood on my shoulders, so I could not see the real world. And therefore I would prefer that you as young persons get as early as ever an empirical access to the world without being too much guided by this Japanese tradition in master and student.
Thanks a lot, Gerd. I take that as mostly a comment, and I would go on, and we keep that also in the back to go back then to what really can the generations provide to each other. I also take up the social network part as something that we might evaluate a little bit deeper. Is it only just a trendy thing, or can it be some sustainable, can it contribute in a sustainable way? And here was a question, and some more questions here. Who is, okay, there's the microphone, sorry, patient.
I also like the presentation very much. Nevertheless, I'm still surprised why you are being so nice to those who already are retired, along the lines of the previous comment. To put it bluntly, they are cheating on you. They're drawing pensions they have never paid for, and they will continue to do that for years and years and years and years. And for instance, in Switzerland, if there were an initiative from Prosenic Duty, the old age organization, pushing forward the idea of, okay, let's cut down on our pensions and our benefits because it's simply not fair, you can never recover that money, I'd feel a bit more relief, but there are no such signs whatsoever. So why are you so nice to them? Why don't you feel cheated?
Do you feel like that?
A bit, yeah. I'm 45 now, and I know what will happen to me, and I know what will happen to my kids. Mm-hmm. At least in financial terms. Of course, there are many other ways to give something back, but financially, it's a big cheating game that is going on.
Okay, let's have some more questions.
Wouldn't it be easy to just answer?
We have many questions now, but
it's actually just linked to what the man said over there. I want to talk about the last statement you made about how you think you don't need to think about your retirement, but about how the retirement of the current generation, of the now old generation, can be made safe. And I really beg to disagree, because the social contract or the generational contract is negotiated between the different generations. And if you as the young generation side with the old generation, who is looking for us, who is looking for our own generation? And also what I was missing a little bit is the visions, how you personally think how your retirement should look like, what kind of options you want to have in the future, what system shall be there that also guarantees you a safe and a well-funded retirement system. So that I would really like if you could go into that a little bit to tell us what you would hope for your own future in 40 years, even though it's difficult, I know.
So let's have this gentleman who is waiting for a long time now for another question.
Yes, I saw a clear contradiction between Tito Meyer and Susanna Groth. Tito Meyer was asking for more determination of the system, for instance, the pension system. And if you want to do that, you must know how to influence the parameters of the system. You must have some knowledge. Susanna Groth said, that is not a topic for me, it's not urgent, not directly influencing me, context will change, it's a topic for my parents. But I guarantee you, you must know the parameters of the system because you are just paying for the elderly people now. And if you are not intervening, there will be nothing left. So I was a professor for 21 years at the University of Bern, taught the subject of human relations and human resource management, and never had a course about pension system. And the last year I invited a director of a pension fund, and then the students saw how they are affected, how they are influenced, and then there was a wake-up call. Don't miss that wake-up call. Yeah? Don't say that's a topic for my parents. You are touched.
Okay, to give you some time to think about that, I will allow another question from David Bresch.
Thanks. First, I really liked the intro with the cooking shows because it tells us something how we perceive relevant things in our lives, and then all of a sudden we get reminded of other elements to that. One short comment and two small questions. The comment: I'm 43. I still don't really care about my pension in economic terms. What I really kind of a bit puzzled, to say the least, is will the environmental quality be good enough at the time I require? Will the social fabric be strong enough? So these are elements I think probably will be good to take up. Question number one, I think, was mentioned by Tito Meyer. This crowding out of the young in a democratic system, where probably those reaping the benefits will tell the others what they have to spend on the system, is for me a troubling idea. Have you ever thought about what could be remedies to make that not happen? And again, there also make sure the fabric is strong enough that this works both ways. The second question, a bit the provocative one, to the Greek. Wouldn't, for some of the youngest ones in the country, a state default not be an opportunity?
So, let's turn to you.
I would like to answer the first question to, I don't know his name, I'm sorry. You asked us if we're not angry because we have to pay in, but actually I have the feeling I'm really glad that my parents still finance me because I haven't earned money so far, and I'm really glad that they say, okay, you can do your bachelor, you can do your master if you want to, and don't say go to work and earn money. That would be another possibility. And to go over to your question, I know you don't want to hear it, but I think the challenges for us or for the younger generation first will be, and this is also part of the social welfare state, to get a job and to have the possibility to have a job and family. And it is, we talked a lot about this question, but for myself, I couldn't say, it's really, 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 really difficult to imagine how retirement in 45 years will look like.
Tito, would you like to answer directly?
Well, I think the answer from my side is going in a similar direction as before. I think it's important to think about the topic. We shouldn't ignore it, and we should most definitely understand the circumstances and the influencing factors of it. But yeah, to take about point out of my presentation, we will have, with the years and with the upcoming 10 years, less and less influence into the decisions, because the elderly become even from a democratic point of view, as well as from a financial point of view, more and more powerful. So, yes, we are the ones who are going to pay for it in the next decades, but most probably we won't be the ones who decide on that. So, still we should know about it, still we should think about it, and still we should have a picture in mind what we would like to have. So, of course, social security and having basically something to eat and a flat or a home when I'm old, so sometime in 40 years maybe, and when I exit the labour market. So at that point, this would all be great, but even future scientists dare to take a too defined and too precise look into such kind of future. So if you take a point of companies or big enterprises, they also have to think about the future and what their strategy needs to be in the future. They usually plan for the next 5 years on a closer look, and then they try to think about the next 10 and maybe 15 years. Maximum 20, and then it just stops because nobody can predict what's coming up then. So, have a nice picture in mind, but don't expect that to happen. This would be my advice. Thanks.
Katharina. Yeah, I would like to say that I totally agree with the professor and also with the man on the back. I'm coming from Greece. I'm 24 and I'm working since I'm 17, so I'm really angry, for example, about what is happening now in my country, that retirement is one of the big issues, and I think what we are doing now is demonstrating to let people know what is going on. And of course I'm very angry because I'm working and one big part of my salary is going for social security and health, and I'm very interesting and I feel like they're stealing me. So at least the only thing at least I can do is to I feel very proud right now that people in Greece are demonstrating, at least somebody to hear how we feel and how unfair is what is going on.
Other comments? Answers? So I'd like to ask Professor Höpflinger and then a second question here.
A question from all of you. So young people as a demographic minority, have you any suggestion how we can improve the social and political power of the young for decision makers in the future? So that the young have a more powerful voice, even if they are a demographic minority. Are there any ideas?
Yeah, to find against it. I mean, what can we do to try for our best? All of us, I mean, we are studying, maybe working at the same time. Personally, I mean, if I don't have any other background, what I can do is go out and say what I feel, how unfair I feel like this is, I don't know.
What about social networks?
Yeah.
Is that helping the youth?
Yeah, I think it's helping a lot to share our opinions.
So you only would reach your generation that already holds your opinion?
Excuse me, Nelson.
So is it a self-confirming medium? Or is it enhancing the debate or enlarging the range of discourse, or is it only addressing and including those who already know and hold the same opinion and are mostly of the same generation?
I think social networks are a way, of course, to express our opinion, and I think politicians as well are using social networks. So for sure they know how we feel. And
are politicians reading these networks, or is it only their assistant who reads it?
Yeah, joined. I mean, as far as I know.
They read it and also they use it, those are the same networks.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
They read it and also they use it, the same social networks. So I think they make work, but with good use from the young people, maybe we'll have a good result.
Would you put a lot of hope into this kind of tool, the social media? A lot of hope.
No, we have to go to the streets, I mean to demonstrate in front of the parliament. We have to do something like that. We have to show them how unfair it is.
Any other voice?
Well, I think the basic idea is to understand each other. It's rather less important if you do it by demonstrations or by social networks, but this would be my point to you, that having the democratic power, you should use or accept your responsibility, because the current system, the pension system, says from a financial point of view, those who are in a period of their lifetime where they earn money, they have to take responsibility in a financial point of view for the elderly as well as the youngsters. So if the elderly at the same time got the democratic power, they've got the full responsibility for anybody else and for the whole system to work. So maybe it's the task and the most important point for those who are having the power to understand all of the others' needs in general. Fedra.
I think that an important point for our generation is that we have realized that now the game is global, which means that it's not just intergenerational, it's also international. There are emerging economies that in the previous year they didn't have any social state or any welfare state, and in the future years they will also have. We understand that we have to be united as, I guess, in a more international and supranational approach as Europe to be able to compete with the other markets, because the difficult thing for the social say, I believe, is to find resources to be financed.
So what I hear now is the two sides between in this layout of generation conflict or generation contract. I see some advice to have more anger and more street demonstration. On the other hand, I see the quest for more understanding, and in the middle it's a question about the social fabric and how to hold the society together. And I guess we have heard some ways to do that on an organizational or media level, and on the other hand we have seen that this can be in a very personal level, and it's also about contents. What contents are exchanged? Is it about money or is it about wisdom? And probably what we already learned is that not only the older generation can teach the younger generation, but vice versa, and there also a power question comes in, as Gerd pointed out, that who benefits, who gets the favor in that Senpai-Kohai system? Is it really the younger who learns from the advice of the older, or is it the older who exploits the younger? So, I have another question here.
Well, you said that if you want to trust each other, then we have to know each other. This is a very important issue, to trust to each other. In my opinion, I'm looking very deeply impressed on this crisis we are running in. Because I know since 20 years professors who said 20 years ago that the idea of this economy is not possible. It won't work, they said. The euro, for example, won't work. They said we have to have national monetary systems. What I'm interested in now is Are you aware on such ideas that have been written 20 years ago? Do you know such professors? Do you get in contact with them? Because if you want to trust to each other, we have to reflect on why these false economical theories came to the students and still today come to the students. For example, there's just one book I'd like to know if you have heard about it. It was written in 1975 by Friedrich von Hayek called The Denationalization of Money. Have you heard about this book? The Denationalization of Money? Never heard. So ask your professors to inform you about the idea of the globalization since the 75 years. Then you will get in contact with other professors who will tell you the truth. To know the truth of the history is very important if we want to get again in a situation where we can trust each other.
Okay, I have another question or comment way in the back.
It's not so much a question as more of a remark to the statement that was just said. I just want to say, I guess if we talk about academic progress and progress in science and knowledge, I find it very difficult to use the words right or wrong, because I guess in science we progress in our knowledge not necessarily through the individual knowing what is right, but rather through discourse deciding what is right and wrong, more along the lines of what, say, for example, Karl Popper thought of how knowledge would evolve, because eventually ideas might be proven wrong, but this might take time, and I find it very hard to directly argue this or that is wrong or right, because it always also depends on the context, and I guess especially in economics, which is so driven by the assumptions that we decide to agree on, and especially when we look at the euro, I find it very challenging to come up with simple recipes, and I would prefer if we don't try that, because it's probably like simplifying, it doesn't necessarily solve the problems that we are facing. And I guess there are a lot of very good economists at international institutions that try to figure out solutions for this problem, and I guess we can all agree that some decisions were taken at a stage when not necessarily all countries were at a point where joining a monetary union was necessarily ideal. Maybe that is the point that can be agreed upon, but once you're at the point where you have decided to have a common currency, the cost of exiting is probably higher. I mean, that seems to be the consensus at the moment, so I feel very uncomfortable if we discuss issues related to exiting as if it never happened, because that's just not possible at this point anymore. So I think we might want to try and discuss ways on how to deal with the situation that we're facing right now, and not just trying to say, well, let's just imagine it never happened, let's go back to the 70s and move on from there, because that's not possible. So I think I just want to say that. Thank you.
So again, my question would be, what can the generations provide to each other? Is it just the labor, the workforce, or the production on the one hand, and the consumption on the other? And then, of course, again, the question is who's getting the favor, of course. But also, we had the alternative regarding the both are benefiting model. We had, and there we had an emphasis on the generations, but the alternative view would be it's not about generations. It goes in other. We have to model it differently, and then it becomes more. Maybe then questions come in like is there a kind of a cultural knowledge that can be enhanced, and is that doesn't work intergenerationally? And also the question would be, where are actually the limits a welfare state can be constituted and also maintained. So is it really about the national collective, and there you can have solidarity also in insurance terms, for example, with social insurance. But if we skip the national borders, then this discussion takes an entirely different path. And I heard from your side that at least the Greek delegation doesn't trust that much into international, say, regulation or into international agreements and collectives. So is it really about the generations, and if so, what is it the generations can provide to each other? This question goes to everybody. I mean, basically I'm asking, is the question the right question, that we have this distinction between the young generation and the old generation? And I would first ask you to basically say, yes, the young can provide this, or the old can provide this, and maybe in a second term say we have to bring in other models. So who would like to argue for that this dichotomy really makes sense, and why? Maybe you like to answer this?
I had another point. A much more optimistic point. There was so much complaining about the loss of political influence. The question of my colleague Höpflinger was not yet answered. But you have economic power. In the Western world, Central Europe and Scandinavia, we call it a competition for talents. You see, when you see a big survey of Boston Consulting Group, there are two big topics in human resource management: demographic and talent management. And talent management is your chance. The companies will fight for you. Unfortunately, not in the same way in the Greek, Spanish and Portuguese scene, but in Central Europe, in Northern Europe, it's the case, because you are rare. And they want to expand in Germany, in Switzerland, all these international companies, and they just need you as students with international experience. We had never a generation of young students, I know universities since 40 years, we had never a generation with so much international knowledge, exchange programs, Bologna system, etc. Yeah, and this is a big advantage, and this is your asset, and with this look you go optimistically in the future. You have power, not so much power in the political system, but on the labor market. There you will be demanded. I'm sorry, not so much you, but you had already understood the influence of the pension system. Yeah. You are on the right way.
So I have some other statement here and later there.
Well, first of all, Markus Zürcher, Swiss Academy of the Humanities and the Social Sciences. First of all, I agree with the argument of blackout by the labour market, by Norbert Thom. I think as well there will be a big demand. But you ask us whether or not generation matters and different maybe attitudes to our life. And what is stroking me very much, that is your openness, your flexibility, that you're not sitting here and telling us I want to have a house in 10 years or in 20 years, but you are very flexible and so on, and I think that's a gift in this situation. And if you're looking at the Shell studies and so on, then you can see that really the time horizon of planning is shrunk extremely. So generations before you had a time horizon of 20 years of planning and very concrete ideas how life should go on, and you're very flexible, very open. And if this would not be the case, if we had now a generation who would tell us we want to exactly know how much we will receive from pension funds when we are 65 65, then we would have a little problem. But now I think it's something that we have to find an interpretation for it as well. There are some people say that you are super opportunists, so that you're not just looking at the best opportunity. Others maybe say flexibility or open-mindedness, I don't know. But I can see differences in the attitude to time, to planning, and for the moment I think everyone can be lucky that you have not such clear ideas as generations had before you.
Okay, I have another statement there.
I just wanted to react on what Mr. Thom said, because I'm not so sure if this is really true with the war on talents. I know there's this talking about that, especially of these companies you mentioned, but on the other hand you have countries with the huge youth unemployment rates, a lot of students doing studies and they don't find a job afterwards. So I'm not so sure what this talk should be about. It's maybe just very good students, and there I can imagine there's really a fight to get this into their companies. But the normal students or all the mass of other students, I'm not so sure if they are so demanded, and I would see youth unemployment, for example, also in France. I guess there's rather a mismatch there from what education people make and what firms demand. They would rather need people with a little bit more practical skills than just a university degree. My second comment would be on this intergenerational aspect. I mean, I just know the Swiss welfare state, and here I see that this is just a very small part of it. I mean, it's just in the AHV where we have this aspect inside, and if you look at the pension system as a whole, it's even a small part in the pension system, you know, the intergenerational, the Umwandlungs, not SATs, the Umwandlungs, how you say, the way to finance the AV, that's what I mean. That's not even in the pension system, it's the biggest part. So thinking about the welfare state as a whole, it's not, may not be such an essential question.
Any reactions, Fedra?
A comment to that, and also to the professor's question. We heard about international companies, skills, and talents, and the exception of the South Europeans from that. I believe that there is a contradiction, because if there are equal opportunities and your skills and your talents are what companies, international companies expect from you, and this is the field where you compete, then it doesn't really matter where you come from. I mean, international means that you can be from every part of the world, and I have many friends that work in Novartis, which is a Swiss international company, and they are Greeks. So I don't believe that, I don't see why you should accept some students if you would like to have equal opportunities and to give equal opportunities. If we compete in an international field, it doesn't really matter where you come from.
Somebody else?
Well, I think the most central point for your argument is that there will be, or there is actually, or already a war for talents. How do you find a talent? Someone who goes to the university? Yeah, well, then we're on the same line here, because I also do not think that every student is going to be seen by companies as a talent in that kind of war you mentioned. I think this counts for the top 10, maybe 20% of the students, those who got in their studies international experience, maybe participated strongly into extracurricular activities or had a lot of experience within companies already during their studies, but that does count for this certain amount of, which is still a fraction of all students, and all students are still a fraction of the young generation. So if you're arguing we don't really have a problem because there's a war for talents, you're speaking about a fraction of a fraction. So it's great that they, and I think this counts for everybody sitting on this stage. Yes, we have a lot of opportunities. We have, a lot of language skills. All of us are able to speak different languages. We can adapt. We have already international experience. Most of us have already practical experience, which is great, but it doesn't work for all students. It doesn't work for our generation as a whole, and we need to solve that problem, not the problems of the 10 or 20% of the students, because I think even in the past, and this is due to the being the top off, they will sort of the problems by themselves.
I'd rather close here with the last remark that Andreas Hatzigeorgiou, is that correct spelling?
Yes.
We had lunch with him, and he has a Greek father, and he was born in Sweden, and he got a PhD in economics, and he's now working with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in Sweden. So, epitome of such a career. And we had a very nice lunch, and he told our students, so everybody's expecting from you that you solve the problems of the world, and I said, thank you very much, they are already nervous. But I think, and even if we didn't solve all the problems of the world, I think you did a very great job. I'm very proud of you. I'm also proud of you. You participated fairly in the discussion. And I'd say we take the opportunity to close it here, because that gives you some space to have a little rest, go to your hotel, whatever. And I'd say thank you very much.